Trey's done such a phenomenal job in really just being consistent and a great example. I mean, I've learned so much just from watching Trey grow his business, his organization, watching him with the way he responds to things, how he's really kind of reinvented himself to a level of massive success where he's an integrity partner. And that's the thing. I'm hoping that next year, if I bump into myself, I'm like, who the heck is that? Because I've reinvented myself. I'm trying to grow and develop. It's like if I go meet with friends and family I haven't seen in a long time, I almost want to have to reintroduce myself after, a year, just because it's like, I should be so different. Like, who are you? Well, good. I'm glad you're wondering like who the heck I am, because I've developed. And I've seen Trey, go from working in an office as a recruiter and getting this thing going, right, and trying to make it work, to now he's one of the, I guess 100. There's probably 100 integrity partners in the entire nation. He's one of those, partners, and he's built a massive organization, massive business, and he's helped a ton of different people. And so, guys, if you can lean in and listen as we go through this, I'm going to welcome Trey. Trey, good to have you on, brother.
Thanks for having me. Let me see if I can get my video to work.
Man, I would love to have you kind of talk about, really the journey in your thought process. I think that the difference between like massive success and mediocrity here, and somebody that's doing okay that really has a breakthrough, it has a lot to do with what's between their ears. It's them growing, developing. And there's two different mindsets. I remember reading this in a book, Trey, and it was so good, man. It talked about like this victim mindset and how everybody has some kind of level of this. But anybody that's achieving something that's just phenomenal, right? That's just unbelievable. They really don't have it, man. They take over responsibility. Like they'll take responsibility for if they left the office to be at the office an hour early and they left an hour and a half early to get there and there was a car accident, they still take responsibility. Like, there's something I could have done, right? But just this victor's mindset of like, man, no matter what happens, I'm going to get through it. I'm going to keep growing, developing. And then there's this victim mindset, which is like casting blame, shame, justification, complaining. Can you kind of talk about like the battle between both those? Because it's like it's a constant battle. And I think as we get, when we're new starting the business, all of us, it's easier to pick up the excuses. It's easier to pick up the victim mindset. But as we stay here longer, if we start seeing success, what we know to be true is that there's been a shift from victim to victor. Can you talk about like what that's looked like for you and how important that's played a role when it comes to you building your business?
Yeah, I think the first place to start is, what happens a lot is agents look at results, and then they see those results and they say to themselves, well, how could I get that results? And they immediately go straight to the amount of activity. Well, if I do 30 appointments a week, I'll get X. And sometimes agents don't get that result right away. So then they start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? And then they realize, oh, well, I can't just keep running into a wall over and over and over. I need to do it with a good attitude. So then they'll fix their attitude. And then even when their attitude's right and the activity's right and they're still not getting the results, what's left? It comes down to philosophy. And what philosophy is what you know, how you hold it, and how that directs how you work on a daily basis. And some of those philosophies can hold you back. And one of the main philosophies that holds people back is this idea of scarcity mindset. And you just have to know there's two things I always looked at. Like, it doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. I really do believe that. Like, I don't believe I'm in charge. I just believe I'm here to react the proper way and that I'm being guided. So when something's removed out of my path, I'm thankful for it. God's greatest gifts, they come as problems. So when I'm presented with a problem, my attitude is always, what am I supposed to learn from this problem so that I can grow to the next level? That plays a lot of it. That's part of my internal philosophy. It's like I have a friend, he had a Bentley, okay? And his Bentley got stolen because he parked it in his driveway. And the next day, I saw him on Facebook and he was talking to a small group like this. And he goes, hey, I got great news. My Bentley got stolen. Isn't that awesome? Obviously, it was going to break down on the freeway and I probably would have died. He goes, that was there to protect me. Thank goodness that happened. It might have caught on fire and I'd have been trapped. That's the only option it could have been, because it certainly wasn't to hurt me. It was always to help. So when you're presented problems in the business, you have to look at it like it's meant for your good. And what are you supposed to learn from it? And then what can you control in that situation to get better? This business is a series of ups and downs where you're always getting better with the ups, so the downs don't last as long. That really is it. And the thing you'll find out is it'll keep presenting you the same problem over and over until you become the person to overcome the problem. It's like it's like the person that says, well, I would have helped 20 families last month, but I had a lot of extended draft dates. Well, Yuri had a lot of extended draft dates too, and she helped more than 20. It's no different. It's you got to look at it like, well, everybody gets extended draft dates. So what can I do different to make sure I have enough volume to make sure that even with the extended draft dates, I can help 20 families. But if you're looking at it as blame or scarcity or I don't have enough, there's not leads. My philosophy on leads is there's always enough leads for people who want to pay for them. Pay for leads, there's never a shortage. And there'll always be new ways to get leads, but supply and demand. When you have a supply of people ready to buy leads, then there's people that make leads that are going to see that demand and they'll start producing it. And so that plays a lot of it. A lot of my mindset moving forward was always, this was meant for me. This problem is not meant for me. It's meant to show how to react to it for the people that are watching. Sometimes it's not even about me. It's just about the people that are watching. I mean, how many times, Paul, can you think of when, like, you'll call Sean and be like, how's it going? He'll go, freaking fantastic, and then it's not going freaking, like, everybody knows it's not going fantastic. Like, I know what's on the other side of that, but he never has a crack. He never cracks. He just always has a good attitude, and that does more for the team than wallowing in misery. And so when you have opportunities and struggles and things that are holding you back, just remember that. And remember the right way to react is to not fall victim to gossiping or blaming or any of those things. And there's not a problem that being proactive in this business by helping 10 families a week or hiring or recruiting 10 new agents and helping them write, there's not a problem that can't solve, especially if you do it week after week. I mean, I remember back in the very beginning, you had this record of, like, back then it was 5 families a week because we didn't have any leads. Like, we have a lot of leads now, but back then there weren't any. So you could do 5 families a week every single week. It was like a big deal. And you did that for like 4 years, like every single week with company trips, traveling to build the agency, all the other stuff. And that consistency, you doing that week in and week out, that did way more than anything you could have said. And so it was an opportunity to create an example. And that's the way we need to look at pretty much all the problems that you run into in the business.
I love that, dude. I mean, it's so good. And I think that when you provide like such a great example to others and then you promote the calls and the podcasts and things like that, it's going to kind of help give them that energy, the perspective, maybe just the enthusiasm to continue to put their head down with the right attitude and put in the right activity when that gap just seems like it's never going to close, right? Where it's like, I'm putting it in, but there's no progression quite yet. I think being that great example and that story of hope of, look at that person, maybe I can do it too. And then plugging in the calls where they can tweak, adjust, and get better. It's so essential. And Trey, you talked about like the negativity and the gossip, because it could be a plague. And sometimes it's the blanket that we grab because it feels like it gives us comfort in the moment. But in the long run, it's the very thing that really kind of like almost suffocates us. Right. And I remember learning this concept. I don't know if you remember this before. It was at the practice company, but they'd always say, like, don't ever pass negativity downline or cross line. Do you remember that?
Yeah, 100%.
So
and that's,
where do you pass it then? And then how do you deal with it if something's like on your mind and you're like, dude, this is just something that's really bothering me, bugging me. Maybe I could just like get past it, but I just feel like I gotta have somebody help me kind of work on the way to see it or work on the situation. Like, how does somebody handle that? Because there's negative things that'll happen, man. Like, maybe somebody goes out there and they invest in a certain lead type, right? And they didn't go through FFL, and the lead company took their money or whatever, and they're all mad about it or whatever. Or they go out there and they have 9 no-shows in a row, and they're trying not to get negative, but they're thinking like, dude, what the heck are like. was it this lead type, or was it this, or was it that, or they get hung up on a bunch of times, and they're negative, and they're like, man, I know it's probably on me because the guy next to me booked a bunch of appointments, but it's so hard for me not to think that like maybe I'm so bad and I'll never be good. Like how do they properly work on things that are negative, opposed to bring them downline and crossline where it really spreads and it affects the people? Because that's what you're saying. Sean never had that. Like even when we were going through litigation and stuff like that, I call him up, hey, how's it going, man? It's going great, and I'm over here thinking like, thank God he said that, dude, because I'm about ready to like, dude,
I thought I was going pretty bad.
yeah, like am I going
Maybe I'm overreacting.
we got like, is this lawsuit going to work out? Like, what's going on here? Didn't we just leave a company and start our own? Like, this doesn't seem that bad, but then all of a sudden I got like, there's so many thoughts where I'm like, and then even the leads, but that helped me kind of move forward. And then I knew I had to be that for my people too, because I don't know what they're going through and I don't want to hurt them. But kind of talk about that, man, that philosophy of we don't pass gossip downline or crossline.
Well, when things happen in the business, you don't pass it down. It's good news down, bad news up. Okay. Now there's three parts to this. The first thing is I'm 44 years old. Now I don't want to look at, some of y'all think I'm older. No, but if you look at my track record in life, I have a path of misery of screwing stuff up and just temper tantruming my way out of good situations. And the way I did that is I would let all this stuff build up, and then one day I just explode, And so the one thing about me and Andrew, about our relationship, is I could let a little bit out with Andrew, but the way he handled it taught me so much. Because what he would do is anytime anything was wrong, now there's two things you need to think of here. If something's going wrong, you don't always have to go to Paul and Andrew and talk about it. Like some of it you just need to absorb. And the reason why you want to do that is because when something really is wrong, you don't want to be the person that cries wolf. So if you're complaining about every little thing you hear and you're taking that to Paul or you're taking that to Andrew, like this is how I was able to stay around when I didn't sell a lot, because I didn't do this. I was very careful. So when stuff wasn't good, I just suck it up and I wouldn't say nothing. But then because I had that reputation and I didn't complain a lot, when something was bad, I got a lot of patience from Andrew and Paul, because when I took it to them, it wasn't my character to complain. So they would listen and they had patience for it. But if I was doing it with every little thing, I wouldn't have got the same reception. The other thing I learned to do is I learned to ask for help without complaining. That's a skill set. Like you have to learn how to not be accusatory or make blanket statements or overgeneralize, and just really look at things objectively rather than just trying to put a one size fits all, like these leads suck, I'll never buy these leads. That's not true. You just had some that you couldn't sell. And if you say that too many times to people, like I was always respectful of your guys' time and your energy, because I saw the amount of problems you would deal with. Because what happens is the agency gets bigger, you end up being more reactive than proactive because people bring you stuff all the time. So I was just careful about the blanket statements. And what I learned from Andrew is when I did have issues and I would go to him, the first thing he would say is, he would go, I hear you. Now he wouldn't agree. He would just say, I hear you. He goes, but so what? And he would just sit there and not say nothing else. And then I'd be like, what do you mean so what? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. And he would go, I hear you, but what can we do about that now? I'm like, you're right, can't do anything. It's like, all right, dude, later. And you get off the phone. And so we wouldn't have these long drawn out complaint fests. And people look at that and they say, well, he's minimizing, he's dismissive. No, what he did is he set an example of what it was like not to wallow in it. And what I learned to understand was he understood all the problems too, but we were all in the same boat. And the neat thing about FFL, when you don't put people on a pedestal and you just realize that everybody's human and everybody really is trying their best and everybody's focusing on what they can control, and you take that proactive mindset of, okay, this might be messed up, this might be messed up, I got charged 3 times for the same lead, or whatever the kind of stuff happens. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, Paul, but when they made the first new CRM, everybody was getting charged for like extra leads like 2 or 3 times, and it was just out of nowhere. And people are like, what the heck's going on? What was happening to everybody? But we just went out and sold, and they made it right. They refunded what they had to. And I learned a big lesson there, because we could have just unraveled and freaked out about our extra $1,000 that was getting taken, but instead it was like, hey, it's an extra policy. They'll figure it out. They're not trying to hurt me. We're all in this together. Nobody's perfect. Let's keep it moving. It was that keep it moving mentality, and we're in this together. And so I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think those are the things I would say when it comes to the whole, bad news up, good news down. And the other thing, if you want to grow an agency, you have to get in the habit of talking good about people when they're not around. Like, that's how you create a ton of momentum. Like, if I'm looking at and you were mentioning submit numbers. Okay, everybody needs to submit their numbers. Let me tell you why you guys need to do this. Because those submit numbers, when you look at them, you can get so much more from submit numbers than you can from issue paid. And people say, that's the opposite of what FFL says. It's all about issue. I know, but when there's a discrepancy in issued and submit, that tells you a story, and it tells you where to help. If Bob submitted $798 this week, I don't need to wait 3 weeks in order to see that Bob didn't issue anything. I can see it right away. If Bob submitted, he helped 17 families this week, and at the end of the month, he helped 3 on the issue, then there's something wrong. And there could be a lot of things wrong that you need to be aware of. So without those numbers, you want to get in the habit of looking at it. But what I would do is I would go through my submit leaderboard every single week, and I would call the people that did the best, and I would tell them, good job. I would make a habit of calling those top 25 agents and say, man, you're killing it. What was I supposed to do? Was there something I was supposed to do that I forgot? Did I leave you hanging? And I would just put all the burden on me, like I messed something up. And then they would open up, and I would give them a chance to vent a little bit before it built up to, this catastrophic level where they had to, invite me to breakfast and dump on me for 3 hours. And so I'd open up the line of communication there. Whenever things would go good, if I was working 4 or 5 levels down in the organization and Paulette helped 5 families this weekend, then I would call the person that recruited Paulette and be like, dude, I don't know if you know this, but Paulette is going to kill it. We're all going to get rich because of Paulette. This is unbelievable. You know how many families she's helping? And I would just have a conversation, and they would get excited. And then I'd call the next person. I'd be like, hey, I don't know if you're ready to drive your car into a tree yet. I normally would be about this time every week, but I talked to Paulette and I talked to John. And let me tell you something, the future is bright. It's like, and then Paulette, she just got a whole bunch of new leads. She closed the first 3, like all the stories, all the good stuff. I would just pass it along. And I would get this churning effect of good stuff happening. And I would tip the scales between this attitude of like, everything's going wrong. This sucks. I got 5 no-shows. I sold one and canceled on the way home. I got lost driving home, got stuck in 2 hours of traffic. Like, I would balance all that stuff. I would tip the scales with all this good stuff over here. So this agent that had like a rough day, I would have like 15 stories of people that had good days, even if they weren't on my team, by the way. That's why I would plug into everything. Because even when I didn't have a team, I would tell the story of, Leticia and what was happening on Dom's team, and, what was happening on Killamit's team. And I would tell all those stories that I heard from the TNL and the Monday Morning Wake Up Call and Inside the Sale and all the different podcasts. So positive gossip, spreading that around the organization. I know that gossip's a bad word, but if you start looking at it like, what can I say good behind everybody's back? And allow that to reciprocate. Because one of the things that happens in this business is if you do the right thing and you say good things about people all the time, it's really hard, even when you make mistakes, for people to say bad stuff about you. Like, if you're always giving out a good thing to people and looking at the bright side and trying to help and, building people up and being encouraging, it's really hard for people to take a different tact if you mess up. So it builds grace into your relationships. You make more deposits than you make withdrawals.
Dude, I love that, bro. That's such a big deal. Do you think, Trey, that there was days where, like, dude, you kind of needed the encouragement, and because you were the encourager, that was a source that actually gave you the encouragement? Like, you were going through a bad day, results weren't where they wanted to be. You're kind of like almost doubtful, almost like, man, disappointed. And then you just start calling people and just sharing good news that it actually provided kind of life for you.
That's that's that was my number one selfish reason for doing it. Because I knew if I got in the habit of doing that all the time, that it was really hard for me to be so depressed that I'd give up. Because I have a track record of that. Like when I say I'm 44 and but I learned from that. I messed it up a lot of times. And I just remember these stories that I would tell myself where I would wallow in it and it wasn't really reality. And then 2, 3 years later, I look back and I go, man, that was all in my own head. Like that person that thought I had a problem with them, like they didn't know that I thought I had a problem with them. They had no idea. Like I let these weird situations mess me up that if I'd have just kept a good attitude and kept moving forward, I would be in a much better position. So I had a lot of loss from letting my emotions get the best of me. And going back to what I was saying about like me and Andrew, one of the things I learned was to not let it build up. And so when things would happen, I would go to Andrew. I learned how to talk about stuff that was going on without complaining. And then Andrew was really good about listening to it and moving on. And like when he would move on, he would move on. And
Hey, did you
once
ever get really mad at Andrew for something that what you thought wasn't?
yes, all the time. And then what I would do is I would go to you. So what would happen is like I'd be like, forget it, Andrew, man. I'm gonna go hang out with Paul. So I'd hang out with Paul, then I'd get over and like, oh, I'm bugging Paul now. I'm gonna go back to Andrew. So in this business, you kind of need a mom and a dad. And everybody has that, by the way. It's like I heard early on, Mike Killiman did a call way back, maybe 2015, where he talked about in order to really build a big business, you need a right-hand man. And he explained the role of that right-hand man. And who he was talking about was either Brent or John. He was talking about one of them, maybe both of them at the same time. But it was this idea that like, if you get to a head over here, then there's somebody else to pick up the slack and help out and say good stuff behind your back when you're not there. And that's what you and Andrew did really well together. And that's what me and Andrew did really well together. And that's what Grady and Andrew did really well together. And that's what Grady and Jordan and I look at the dynamic in the different organizations. So everybody kind of needs to find that for themselves, you know, like it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just it's not just being super dependent on one person.
I love that, man. And I remember being, and see, the thing is this, when you really care about somebody, dude, I think that when like sometimes it shows its face like that, you know, like I remember seeing you get so passionate about something that was like kind of bugging you, you know, and you hadn't yet communicated that to Andrew. And like in our minds work in crazy ways, right? We start thinking like, is he getting after me? Like, is he messing with me? Is he doing something for, and like, you know, you let it fester and grow. You know, I always think about it's kind of like that story of, you know, the guys out there coming back from work and gets home and he's got some lipstick on his collar, smells kind of pretty, and his wife's like, the heck? Like, she notices it and she's kind of thinking like, and then she doesn't mention it to him though. She doesn't bring it up. So by the end of the night, dude, she's like, this son of a gun, man. He's got 3 other kids with a different woman. He's got a whole different lifestyle. You know, I remember when he gets home every night a little bit later than what he's supposed to. He's probably at the office, you know, going through all these stories. So like now this person's like got like 7 different wives. You know, they've got 22 kids, and they're the wife that he likes the least. And then she blows up like, bah! And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I stopped by my mom's house and she
Like she gave me a hug and I don't too much makeup.
and she's like, oh, sorry, you know. And dude, like our brains all work like that, you know. And I remember, you know, seeing that stuff, and that's just how it works. But you cared and valued Andrew so much, and he cared and valued you so much. And when things were like that, like they would get heated, and like there would be a flame that was flickering, because it was like, we want to get this thing going, we want to be on the same page, we want to kind of air out things that are bothering us. And I remember reading that in a book about like a relationships, and it was like related to marriage though, but if there's no like emotion, like frustration or anger, when things ain't going the right way and there's no flame burning, that's a dangerous time. It makes sense, where people just don't care, they're checked out. And and I think that, you know, as everybody on here is building a business relationship, like it's okay to have conflict and stuff like that. But just, you know, communication is so crucial and so key to kind of help keep that victor mindset, to help the right perspective, to have the right interpretation, and know that, hey man, we'll all win together at a higher level if we're playing this game together. And so I think that's great, dude. Well, Trey, thank you for hopping on, man. I appreciate you joining us today, dude. This was really, really good. And this is the stuff that it probably matters more than anything else. Like you said it right in the beginning. You said, you get the activity and you get the attitude, but sometimes above that stuff is the philosophy, because when progress still doesn't show up and you're like, man, I feel like I got the right attitude, I'm trying to find the good stuff and putting the work in, that philosophy of how you respond to things and what you look at and how you look at things is a big deal. And I think the goal that every leader should have should be reminding and reinforcing the things that, the philosophies that are going to be essential for people to reach these new levels. Because sometimes, whether it was experience, upbringing, things that taken place in the past, that's what our philosophy is derived from. And that's the one that's going to repeat what we don't want. And so I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for joining, man. Always a pleasure to have you on, and you do so much to serve the team, dude. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you all again soon.
All right, guys, make it a big week. Let's go crush it. Let's go attack, make this the biggest dial day yet. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.